All right, we're live. I'm Juliet Wade, and host of Dive Into World Building, and today we have a very special guest, Bo Bolander, who is uh, joining us from New York.
Yo.
Hey. So, Bo, all of your work is really amazing, but I figured since you have this multiply award-nominated piece of work that came out in Lightspeed called "And You Shall Know Her by the Trail of Dead," which is incredibly awesome. Um,
Very much.
that we should really put focus on that because it probably people who are out there learning about this piece for for their award voting purposes might want to hear you talk about it.
Yeah.
So let's see. I sort of wanted to. I'm not sure how to engage with this without getting super spoily, but you want to tell us a little bit about how the story came to be?
It's basically just a pastiche of all the pulpy, noiry, sweary anime gunslinging Tarantino kind of stuff that I like. I quite like prosy, pretty, like Peter Beagle kind of stuff, but I also have a part of me that deeply loves sweary, shooty, Tarantino-esque shit. So this was me exercising that. I actually had a lit zine ask for a flash piece, which is how this got started. They wanted a flash piece, and of course they weren't going to pay because it was a lit zine. And I was like, I'll see what I can do. I started writing it, and it decided it didn't want to be a flash piece, it wanted to be a novelette. So I got about halfway through and was like, sorry, I'm not going to write you that thing. It's kind of decided to be its own monster. So that's how it kind of came into being, and it just kind of took off. And I did not know what the reception would be. I've been very pleased with how much people liked it. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, well, it's definitely.
It was kind of taking a risk because it's very stylistically. Either people love it or they don't.
Yeah.
I totally understand that. Like it's some people like if bad words and swearing and shooting and pulp are anathema to you, you're probably not going to enjoy it.
Well, and yet, all these pulpy things have been super, super successful in Tarantino's household name. So, right?
Right. I'm just saying, some people, that's not their thing, and that's cool too. I mean, you do you, but if it is your thing, then,
So when did you first get an inkling that the story was big?
I don't know. I think I started it, and actually, it's one of the few stories that I have, I kind of started I did the first part, and then I woke up at 4 in the morning one day and walked into my study and just started writing the rest of it, which has not happened a whole lot. I usually just don't feel compelled to write things like that, and it kind of went from there. It took me 2 years to finish it, actually. I started it like 2 years before it actually sold. I don't know when I had an inkling that it was going to get long. I think once it hit 7,000 words or something, and I wasn't even halfway done yet, I had an idea that, yeah, this definitely. I mean, by that point, it was obviously not Flash.
Right.
I just kind of I do that with stories. I write until they're done. Basically, I don't try to set a limit. And if it's a short story, it's a short story, and if it's a novel, it's a novel, and if it's a chunk of a novel, it's that. Just kind of let them do what they're gonna do.
So, So it seems to me that there's one of the major driving forces behind the story is the character of Rye.
Yeah.
And was that the case for you as well?
How so?
Well, I mean, was she the one who was carrying through and causing the story to become longer and more developed, or?
Obviously, I mean, she is the voice, so she is obviously the one who was kind of driving it forward, seeing where it would go. And
so was there an element of planning to it, or was it mostly just sort of flowing out?
honestly, like there was more planning to it actually than I have been wont to do before. I tried to get out a whiteboard and just kind of plot a lot of it out because it is a little complicated. Like it gets complicated enough that I had to stop and think about it.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite sure of how I was going to get to these like certain points in it. That'll just kind of, you play that by ear. You have certain like beats you want to hit, but in between the beats, it's kind of, like playing it by ear.
Right.
Sort of like jazz, I guess. I don't know. You know what you're going for, but you don't know how you're going to get there.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so Rai herself is sort of a non-human.
She's basically a replicant in the Blade Runner sense, right? Like, probably organic, but definitely synthetic organics.
So she directly inspired by Blade Runner in this case, or
the nature of the replicants, yeah, I would definitely say it's an influence. Or Ghost in the Shell as well. I mean, Ghost in the Shell also is taken a lot of these and themes and done them way better. But it's an homage.
Right. One of the things that I thought was really cool about that was that you did delve a bit into, I mean, because we're in Rai's viewpoint, we're also seeing not just that she exists and that she's a replicant, but also how that being a replicant actually influences the way that she thinks about her value and about her place in the larger scenario and the culture.
Yeah, her self-esteem is not what you call healthy, really. Not for most of it, anyway. She kind of needs a hand up, which I guess we all do. But yeah, through most of it, I know she's pretty fucking damaged. Just a big, sweary bundle of self-loathing and anger.
So you definitely have these two characters who are very complementary to one another, and we don't really discover Rack until a lot later. I mean, like, you get a sort of a sense of him at the start, but you don't actually sort of. He comes on slowly, I guess.
He's basically just like.
I guess you would say.
It's so much truthful from Rai's point of view that you don't actually get his point of view until much later. Just because the driving motivation of the story is Rai.
Right.
So you're basically getting her view of him, which of course is going to be colored. I mean,
Right.
Researcher bias or whatever,
Yeah. Well, in fact, it's interesting because the way that you've structured the story, we not only get her view of him, but we also get his view of her.
Right.
Through a very creative and virtual means.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed writing that part. That was fun.
Tell us a little bit about that, maybe.
You want me to go into spoiler town here, or I can't really get into it without spoiling it.
Okay, you know what? We'll just put a big spoiler warning at this point by saying spoiler warning, everybody, and then if people want to keep listening, they keep listening.
Yeah. So he has to kind of like hitchhike in her body at one point, which is when we switch POVs, and kind of get how he sees her. Which is, maybe not how she thought he saw her. I don't know.
Well, and in fact, you've got several different versions of this because there's not just Rack's view of her when he's occupying her body, but there's also the virtual defense program.
Right, which is basically just how he used to see her. Right.
Right, and created by him, and so you've got this really interesting sort of nested viewpoints of the two of them
Yeah,
considering each other on multiple levels.
yeah. Um, yeah, it was that was kind of why I had to get the whiteboard out and kind of plot it out because it does get a little tangled towards the end. Like things do it's a little less simple than just kind of winging it. Um,
Yeah.
but it was a lot of fun to write. And I'm kind of working on the sequel right now, so that's also fun. I'm getting to do all sorts of interesting stuff with that too.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of exploring where the character might have gone.
So yeah, so the characters are taking you places.
I'm sorry?
So it's the characters taking you places. Are you going to
Yeah.
try to do a little bit more world exploration with that, or is it mostly just about taking
I,
characters?
I really enjoy, what would be the word for it? I really enjoy stories that don't spell everything out for you. Like
Mm-hmm.
the ones that kind of let you build a lot of the world on your own. Like you have to do some world building. You have to. I mean, because it's influencing the characters, and they're influencing it. But I like leaving a little to the imagination, which a lot of people were complaining about. I've seen a lot of reviews that were like, "Well, you're not getting into the world building. Where's the world building?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, I'm basically just writing from this one character's POV, and she's not going to stop and go, well, as you know, Rack, we were created to do this. We were created to do this and this, and let me tell you the details of the worlds and how we travel between the worlds, and what we're made of and all this shit. I mean, because that's not the kind of character it is. She's
Right. Well, and in fact, I
no,
think point of view is one of the best tools for world building that we have, in a
right. You
sense.
just have to have a more subtle hand with it, really.
Yeah.
You can feed people information, but you don't have to I'm not into mapping out the fucking pardon my French the
No, no
entire
worries.
history of the world and every little nuance and detail of it because I don't know that's just not that's not what interests me particularly. Like I'm not really into these things. I like
Yeah.
stories and worlds that kind of leave a lot to your imagination.
Well, and in fact, I think that you do give a very clear picture of the world that they're in,
Yeah.
and when you're using a very tight point of view, as you are, and in fact, because of the virtual reality side of it and the subjectivity that's involved in the plot of the story, it's really important not to get too expansive because we're not. There should be with something like this. You want to have that sense that
Right.
you're doing just what this person understands
Right.
about the world, and they're not going to just take sidebars and suddenly,
Yeah,
start
unless it's
describing.
really bad writing and they're just dropping as you know Bobs or something in it, then they're not going to be doing
Yeah.
that. You really have to be more subtle in that. So I am kind of going into the world building a little bit with the kind of prequel and sequel and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But that is not my main goal, and that's not my main intent. My main intent is the character's journey and what the character is thinking and what she wants.
Mm-hmm.
Which if the world influences that, the world influences that. That's
Yes,
it's
and it
not
does
always a
influence
it's not
that.
always a weakness to despite what some reviewers seem to think, it's not always a weakness to not map out an entire world.
Mm-hmm.
It's what you have an imagination for.
Hmm.
I write about the parts of it that interest me, and the parts that interest the characters. More importantly, I'm more interested in what's going on inside her head than I am what's going on 2 cities away.
Well, and in a sense, what's going on in her head is going to reflect the world in
Right.
some very, very deep
The
ways.
world has influenced her. The world has made her what she is. The world is, basically sat on her and beat her down so much that she's just kind of a fucking wreck.
Yeah.
So, they influence each other.
Yeah. And I think, well, I think that people who rely on the encyclopedic definition of world building are actually doing themselves a disservice.
Right.
One of the things that I notice when I read this story is that you have a lot of really, really strong built into Rise judgment.
Right.
And that judgment comes through over and over and over, just in the way that she chooses to describe things, and in particular the metaphors and similes that she uses for the stuff that happens to her.
Yeah.
Do you is that something where like, how do you find your way language-wise, prose-wise, into her head? Is it a planned process, or did you just kind of feel her in your gut from the beginning?
Well, I mean, she, like, at least part of her is, like, it's basically my internal voice, just kind of broken and mean and big and sweary and, you know, kind of screwed up. So it's easy to write, and as far as like the metaphors and like similes she uses, I always find it interesting writing characters' voices. Like, you have to stop and think about like how they would see things when you're using those metaphors and similes, because like she's not going to describe something as, I don't know, eldritch or something, right? She's not gonna like
Yeah.
She's not, you know, she's only going to use what she's got, like what she's been exposed to. So you kind of have to take that into consideration when writing any character. Really, you have to stop and think about like what their world is, what they see, what they would actually use it compared to, you know, what they have to compare it against.
Yep.
Yeah. And a lot of people, like, I don't know, like, I've read a lot of, like, literary fiction where they will be writing, like, I don't know, a 12-year-old from the swamps of Florida or something. And, you know, they're writing the character, and, you know, she's talking and everything, and she's supposed to be, you know, from this backwoods in Florida. But her voice is entirely the voice of a post-grad from, like, Iowa or something.
Yeah.
It does not sound like a 12-year-old from Florida. It sounds like a post-grad writing a lit story, and it wigs me out. Like, you know, if the voice is not there, then I cannot get behind it. And, you know, some people it doesn't bother them that much, but it's just voice is so important to me that I can't deal with it. Like, it's like, why does she sound like she's like college educated 23-year-old?
Right.
She wouldn't have that. You know, and like I said, some people don't care, but it's a big thing with me.
Well, I mean, it shows in the story, but I think there's also a lot of, I mean, there's a great deal of consistency between the kinds of imagery that she uses, both metaphorically and, you know, I mean, every time you see, it's like blank, you're getting a picture of not only this world and what exists in it, but also Rise past, which is part of what constructs her personality.
Right. It's, you know, her past is constructing her narrative, which is constructing your point of view, which is world building, or it's, you know, building the world she sees. And it's kind of coming into play in the sequel as well. I think I mentioned. Yeah.
So, how would you say it's coming into play in the sequel?
I don't know, just her experiences between the last story and this one. You know, the way she's the way she is, like, I don't want to give anything away, but the way she is, like, where she is in this story, I don't know. Her experiences in the past couple of years might have influenced her a little bit. So it's interesting to see how she's changed since then. Because again, that's influencing world building as well.
Because she changes quite a lot over the course of story number one.
Yeah, over the course of this, but you know, it's and changes even more maybe between that and the sequel. So I'm kind of interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and I'm trying to like write more, kind of get into the her backstory a little more deeply as well, which is going to influence. It's going to influence the sequel as well. It's going to if I do a rewrite of the middle part of Trail of Dead, it'll re-influence that too. Um,
Hmm.
if there are things that I know about her now that I didn't know about her when I was writing the novelette, that'll come into play. So
So um, does it worry you that the Trail of Dead is out there and that you're thinking about revising things or deepening things that you knew when you were writing it?
not really. I mean, I'm not particularly worried about it. Like, I mean, plenty of people have written novellas or novelettes or short stories and gone back and like, rewritten them later for novel format. Uh,
Mm.
and you get to get deeper into it when you do it in a novel and a noveling thing. So
Do
not
you
too.
see a novel coming out of this?
I'm sorry.
Do you see a novel coming out of this whole process?
Oh yeah, and like I said, I'm working on the sequel right now, which is probably going to be a novel.
Oh, so the sequel's a novel.
Right.
Okay.
Um, I think it's a novel. Like I said, like I never force anything to be any longer than it wants to be because that kind of asks for trouble. But it feels like a novel right now. I'm
Hmm.
up to like 25 pages or something right now, and she still hasn't really left where she started. So um,
Well, I won't hold you to that or anything. I was just curious because
yeah,
my
no,
thought was, well, it was likely to be a novelette because the first had been a novelette.
right, no, no, no. I'm just trying to expand everything right now. And I don't know. I have so much fun writing the character that it's coming pretty easily. I'm working on another thing kind of parallel right now, and it's a lot harder just because I don't know if it works as much as I totally know that like I know Rye works at this point. I know her voice. It's easy to get into it. It's easy to slip in and write it.
Hmm.
So doing something different is a little scary right now, honestly. But um, I can't do the same thing twice. Like not even with the sequel. Like I'm not even doing the same thing twice with that. Um,
Hmm.
I'm already like kind of tackling that from a different angle. So I get bored really easily um, with the basic narrative structure. So
Yeah. You want
we'll
to tell
see
us
what.
anything about this new project you're working on?
It's a fantasy thing. It's I don't know, sort of secondary world, but again, I'm not big into like a lot of world building, so
Hmm.
um, it feels more like the Last Unicorn or something where you kind of have to. There's not a whole lot of world building built into it,
Hmm.
other than what the characters need to know. Getting to play with prose in that one, kind of, been reading a lot of like Burgess and Pynchon and stuff. So I'm kind of playing with narrative voice and stuff. Like I think like one of the more interesting like narrative voices I've kind of seen have been in the Mad Max movies, like Fury Road. Like everyone in that, like they had a very interesting patois and dialect.
Mm.
And I don't see many people like even when they make like post-apocalyptic like films like that, they don't mess around with the language much, and a lot of like prose now doesn't mess around with the language very much. It's all very staid. I don't know if it's fear that it's not going to sell or what, but people don't want to play with stuff. Um,
Mm.
and I mean, all I can do is play with stuff. Um, so it's kind of like I switch between that and the Trail of Dead stuff, and it gives me a break from Rye occasionally. It gives me a chance to do something different, and I can switch back, and so that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
Cool.
Yeah, and hopefully it'll not be a huge mess. So whenever you're trying something new, that is the big worry is this going to be a huge mess? Am I actually wasting my time?
Right.
But I don't know, I'm having fun with it at this point. So I know the Trail of Dead stuff is not a huge mess. So I can if I get too worried, I can work on that.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think that obviously, well, I mean, it's clear that that Trail of Dead is very solid and everybody
Oh, no,
really
yeah, like I know that people like that and they like that character now, like so like there's no worries there. I posted a snippet of the sequel actually on my website, on my blog, like a weekend or two ago, and people like exploded. Like people are so excited for more of that character. It was really heartening. I mean, when you're working on a novel, you're alone. You're
Yeah.
basically locked in a sensory deprivation chamber with your words until you either send it to your agent or give it to a friend to look over. So just posting that snippet and having people like really get excited about it was nice. Um, it's
Yeah.
a little
So
motivation.
you had the original Trail of Dead got picked up by Lightspeed.
Right.
Was that early in the submissions process for you, or was that later in the submissions process?
How so?
Like, for example, did you send it to a lot of places before it landed
No,
at Lightspeed?
they grabbed it pretty quick. Um, I think I sent it to like one other market before that, and they were like, "This is a great story, but it needs to be a novel." I think is what they said actually. And I was like, I have spent 2 years on this thing. I'm ready to be done for now. Like I'm ready to at least
Yeah,
get some
yeah,
feedback and know that I'm actually not just kind of like it was such a gamble to begin with writing this thing because of the language and everything. Like a lot of people are really put off by all the swearing. Like I kind of assumed when Lightspeed bought it that about 40% of the fucks would get cut out, and they
yeah. Mhm.
didn't. Um,
Yeah.
so like it wasn't quite meant to be that over the top, but they wanted to go with it, so I was like, okay, you. So like if you look on Goodreads, like there are a lot of people who really don't like that story, just because of the language. Like they're like, why does she talk like that? What 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 made her like that? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Gosh darn it. Um, but yeah,
Well, but I mean, I
Lightspeed.
think in a way it's in a way that's sort of a premise problem rather than an execution problem,
Right.
right?
It's they're like, what made her like that? And I'm like, well, I guess you'll just have to read the darn stories. Gosh darn it. But I can't blame people for not. If that's not their thing, that's not their thing. But yeah, Lightspeed, they just snatched it right up.
Great. I mean,
Yeah,
fantastic, right?
yeah. It
So,
was like I have been very lucky in that I have not had a whole lot of difficulty selling most of the stuff that I actually finish. Of course, my process is such that it takes me forever to actually finish anything. So, you know,
that's all right.
yeah.
So the only reason I asked that was because, I mean, every story sort of has a development process, and you spend 2 years doing this, and all of a sudden, wow, bang, lands, and you're great, like great. And then there's
Yeah,
other this further unfolding of, well, suddenly people are really starting to love it.
yeah.
Um,
That was
did
the
you
relief.
get an inkling online that people were really loving this story before you had award nominations and stuff like that?
Yeah, like I mean, when it came out last year, I started like I got some really good reviews from people I really trusted. Like Amal Amatar gave it a really good review.
Mm-hmm.
K. Tempest Brantford gave it a great review. And once like people I trusted started saying you did good,
Mm-hmm.
like you did real good. At that point, I felt comfortable. Like I kind of took a breath.
Yeah.
Because I didn't like it. I did not know how it was going to go over. Because it
Yeah.
really could have gone either way. I mean, it's so stylistically itself that if you don't like it, then you don't like it. I'm just very lucky that a lot of people really liked it.
And so did you start working on the sequel then after that point?
No, I just recently started working on the sequel actually. I kind of been thinking about how I wanted to tackle it. Because I started writing like kind of a prequel, and then I got kind of more interested in writing the second half of the story. Honestly, it just interests me more at this point. So I'm gonna get that done, and then go back and see. I'm kind of writing it backwards right now, honestly, which is a weird way to do things, but I have never been one to do things normally. So
Whatever
Um,
works, you know.
exactly. You know what? Like I'm like, if the second half of the thing wants to get written, that's what I'm gonna write. Like if that's what I want to get done right now, that's what I'm gonna get done. And I can go back and either retrofit it or, see how the end of the story has influenced the beginning of the story. We'll see. Um, and Lightspeed is always so great to work with. I think they Lightspeed and Nightmare have bought most of my stories. I've sold like 6 or so maybe at this point, and they have bought most of them, and they're always so great to work with. The entire crew is really great.
That's
Um,
awesome.
they promote their stuff really well. The editing team is great. It's just a joy to work with them. And I got great Galen Dara art as well.
Oh
And Galen
yeah,
is an
which is
yeah,
always just amazing.
yeah.
Galen's amazing.
They were asking me. They were like, "Do you have any artists in like mind you want to write?" And I was like, "Galen, Galen, Galen."
Yeah, because
She
he
did a
would.
fantastic job because I've seen that illustration so many times now that if it wasn't fantastic, I would be sick unto death of probably seeing it. But luckily, I got amazing artists. So I got real lucky, and so I can still, look at it and not, want to gouge my eyes out at this point.
Yeah,
Really beautiful piece of art.
yeah. So is there a research component that goes into these stories about Rye, or is it mostly just sort of
It's
personal experience?
it's personal experience. It's just kind of making it up again. I I used to go to the firing range a whole lot, so I do have some expertise with pistols. That was like my Zen thing for a while, a few years ago. Like I would just go to a gun range, and it's you to be a really good marksman, you kind of have to like it's a Zen thing almost. You have to kind of get out of your head, like you can't think about it too much. So I would go and do that for a couple hours a week, and it was kind of like like some people meditate and some people, do archery or something. I would just go fire off a pistol for a couple hours. So I do have experience with that, and I mean, that's kind of come in handy.
Yeah, it would definitely, given.
Yes. And I kind of grew up around firearms as well, so I do have that experience. And then a lot of like, it's funny how much of yourself like goes into these things, and you don't even notice it until you go back and reread them.
Yeah.
Because like going back and rereading it now, I'm like, man, there's a lot of stuff I was like putting in there that I didn't even see until I've gone back and looked at it again. Just personal stuff. You put so much of yourself into these, but you don't even notice until you go back and look again, like a year later or something. You're kind of blind to it. Until you have it's kind of like when you're editing and you have to like put a story away and like come back and look at it a month later or something.
Yeah.
You see things you didn't even expect to see.
Yeah. When you come back to it, you see different things.
Yeah.
And especially, for example, I mean, when you're speaking a language, for example, you're not consciously thinking about most of the stuff you're doing.
Right.
And then if you want to go back again and look at it analytically, you can actually pull a lot of stuff out of it, but you're not analyzing it while you're speaking it.
Right.
So.
And it's interesting too because like I don't really do second drafts. Like I'm one of these people who like I get it out in one usually, and I'm so obsessive about it that I'm editing the entire time anyway. So like if I don't like a sentence, the sentence doesn't stay. Like I'll come back the next day and be like, well, that was a shit sentence. I'm gonna delete that and start over. Which is why I am horribly slow. But usually by the time I turn things in, they're clean enough that like this one, like I turned it in to the editor, and they sent back the line edits, and there were a few like for the first half of it. Now about halfway through it, the line edits just kind of stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And like did my like word processor like eat your edits or what? And they're like, no, you're fine. Nothing else to really edit. And I was like, well, I'm glad that the 2 years I spent tweaking this thing more or less means that your job is that easy.
That's great.
Yeah, it was blessedly easy. It was what you see is basically my first draft. Like the finished story is basically a first draft. Um,
It's almost like all of it is developing simultaneously rather than, I mean, yeah, the way that you describe your process, it seems like, yeah, I had something intelligent to say, but then it didn't,
um,
it didn't happen.
no, it's just like, I mean, that's, and you can't do that with a novel either, which is like, it's a learning process right now, because like I have to keep moving. Like I will go back and look at something I wrote the day before, and I'll be like, well, that needs fleshing out or something, and I'm like, well, I can't stop right now though. I have to keep moving. I can do that. That's what, edits are for. That's what second drafts are for. Because like, I mean, a novel is such a different beast from a short story or even a novelette. I mean,
Yeah.
um, it's using different muscles, and you you can't just make it perfect on the first go, because like, there's stuff you're not even going to notice in something of that length. Um, so I'm sure you could like get it in one, but it might take you 5 years, and like by then your agent will have like, hung themselves or something. Um,
Hopefully not.
yeah, I'm trying to avoid that. I love my agent, and I don't want to make him wait any longer than he's got to. So I'm just kind of pushing through, which is hard because I'm a perfectionist. But um, yeah, got to do it. Got to get it done. Um, and also, like, never let it be like never downplay the uses of prescription drugs on an ADD brain, because like I up until now, like up until recently, I've had so much trouble focusing on just sitting down and writing. Like, even fiction, just sitting down and getting the work done was almost impossible. Um,
Mm,
until I just went to the doctor finally and was like, I need a script. And now it's easy. So it's not
wow.
always, you're not always just being lazy, and like everyone's like, sit down and write and sit down and write, and sometimes like your brain is just not wired for that, and you have to get help, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's working wonders for me. So
Yeah. I'm
um,
glad of that.
yeah, it's like, sitting down and writing, just getting the pages out every day is, there's a big debate on, some people say, it's okay if you only get it like a sentence out, and some people are like, oh, you should write this many every day. Um, but until I got medicated, I could not write that many every day. Like, it was impossible. I couldn't even, like, if I got a sentence out in a week, it would be, a miracle. Um, but like, sometimes it's not just you being lazy or unfocused or not caring enough. Sometimes it's just chemical. Um,
Mhm.
so that's kind of uncovering that has been a big jump as well, because I get work done every day now, and it's not
Yeah.
hard. It's still hard because I'm picky, but it more or less comes out pretty easily. Um,
Well, that's terrific.
yeah, no, it's great. Um,
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought it up actually because a lot of people, I mean, obviously writing process is a different thing for everybody, right? But you do get these very, very strong messages like just sit down and write
right,
and they're not one size fits all and it's really valuable to know that.
right, and like, and sometimes you need to know that you're not alone, and that it's not just you, and it's not you being lazy or like not wanting to be a writer enough. Sometimes it's just your brain needs help. Um, and a lot of, like, especially with adults, like, ADD goes undiagnosed a lot, especially in women. Um,
Mhm.
and people will think, oh, I'm just scatterbrained, I'm just, this or that, I'm just an airhead. And it's like, no, your chemicals are fucked up, and you need to, help. Um,
Yeah,
and it's hard to ask for help, but it's, boy, does it help when you actually do it.
yeah, yeah, that's terrific.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to actually ask Che and Morgan if you guys would like to ask both some questions at this point.
Um, I guess I just this isn't a world building question, but I keep wondering this because I've noticed like a lot of SF and F short story authors have agents. And how do you get an agent before you have a novel?
Um,
Is
entirely by accident. Like I said earlier, like my path to everything has been completely weird, and I don't recommend anyone follow me. Because like I got the devil's own luck, and do nothing like normally. Like everyone's like, okay, you need to do it like this, and they draw you out a chart, and here's how your career will go. You'll write a novel, and then you will submit it to agents, and the agent will buy it, or they won't. And but the way it went for me is like I don't know, I don't know, I just got very lucky and turned in like what I had of my skills and everything, and they were like great. Um, and had enough confidence in me to kind of sign me right there.
So this was a relationship that you made in person?
I have known my agent. It's Michael Curry. Michael Curry is amazing.
Okay.
I've known him for a long time. He is just starting to build his clientele. And he had enough faith in me to sign me without me having a novel, and I had enough faith in him to sign out with him despite the fact that I was his first client. And it's working out very well. But like how you get an agent, like someone asked me to help them write their query letter, and I was like, I can't actually help you because I don't actually know, because I've been so incredibly lucky that I've been able to kind of blast past a lot of that stuff, and do it without having to do. Here is what you do. Here is the ladder you climb. But I mean, if you think you've got 20 pages or something and they're good enough, submit them, I guess. But I really wish I had better advice for people. Because my path has been really weird. I don't know how I've gotten so lucky in a lot of things, honestly.
It's a combination of luck and
yeah, I mean, like
talent and all of the above.
Yeah, like I mean, talk to people, like make connections. I mean, connections are important. They are. Don't go out trying to make friends to climb a ladder, but if you make friends, they'll help you out and they'll point you in the right direction, and the more people the bigger your support group is.
Right. Well, I would have to agree with that because most of the luck that I have had has had to do with knowing people.
Right. Exactly. It's not all who you know. It's you gotta do the work yourself. But having a support group is an amazing good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. People we never get anywhere we're going on our own. People are always boosting us up and helping us. And I've had a lot of boosts and have been very lucky and very privileged in that regard. And I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it also makes it very hard to actually give people advice when they ask things like, how do I write my query letter, or how do I get an agent? And it's like, I can help you. I basically walked off a sidewalk and fell into it, so I also had the novel behind me too, though. I mean, and having something to show them, like anything to show them, is good. I mean, the novelette was super popular by that point anyway, so Sorry, that answered absolutely nothing. That was just me rambling for 20 minutes about how I don't know how I got here.
Well, fortunately, it wasn't actually 20 minutes. Yeah. That's okay, though. Yeah, other questions?
Well, I haven't finished reading it, the story, but I'm going to. It's up on the screen. I was more interested in the in your ADHDs. Is that what you've got?
Yeah.
Or is it ADD?
I was just diagnosed before they even had a differentiation between the two back in the day. So.
Yeah, I was just diagnosed with ADD a couple of months ago, and so I can really what you were saying just really hit me with, wow,
Yeah.
it's not just me, it's wonderful, it's works.
No, it's
And just that you've
something
had some
people, yeah.
success is very encouraging.
There is no way I could have gotten a novel done without the medication. I don't think. I mean, I should probably not count my chickens before they're fully written, but it seems like I'm getting a appreciable word count now. So it's such an amazing feeling to actually be productive and not just be kind of sitting frozen by my own indecision all day. Because that's what it does. It basically freezes you so that you're kind of you've got so many ideas coming in and so many things to do, and you can't pick a single strand out and just follow it. So you sit and you're kind of paralyzed by all these branching choices, and then the day is done and you've got nothing done. And the medication, it doesn't turn you I hate these portrayals in the media of it turning you into a zombie who only does work, and it's no, it just narrows it down so you can actually focus on one thing at a time. Which is, that's how I'm getting stuff done now. So, and it won't, hopefully it won't take 2 years to finish a novel. Or a novelette. Recently, I've been having, it's interesting writing the novels because with short stories recently, I've been having a problem where it's what's the word? Focusing on finding an idea that I feel is worth actually stretching out into a short story or a novella is proving rather difficult because I need to interest me, a story these days has to be more than just a cute hook. There are plenty of perfectly acceptable stories out there. They're just cool idea. But that doesn't interest me, personally, at least in writing it. It's got to have a through line. There's got to be something deeper going on. So figuring out how to, actually write short stories that interest me, is kind of proving hard, because I've got a lot of cool ideas, but what's the through line is always the question. What's the emotional underpinning of this thing? And if it doesn't have the emotional underpinning, then I'm not particularly interested.
Right.
But the double-edged sword of that is when you have to when you're writing it is usually when a lot of this stuff will come up. So it's I'm what's the point of writing this? But it's well, you'll find the point when you write it. And it's yeah, but what's the point? So it's kind of a bitter cycle. And I don't know, having the novels is good because that I know the through lines of both the novels, so that gives me something to do, something to work on. Because short stories, I'm having a crisis of faith with short stories right now. We'll see how that turns out. I need to be focused on novels more right now anyway. So.
Cool. Yeah, I'm sure that many people will be very happy to see novels in this context. So.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know, short stories. I mean, there are several really good ideas I've got. It's just I have to figure out what the point is. What the hell is the point of this story? Because I read so many, really, they got really cool ideas, and it's oh, it's a cool short story. Okay, what the hell was the point of that? Was it just it was a cool idea? If I'm not still thinking about the story the next day, then it probably I don't know if I feel like it did a really good job of bringing it, more or less. So yeah, I'm kind of figuring that out right now.
Wow, cool. Well, I hope it goes well. I think we're going to say thank you for coming. Thanks
so much for having me.
It's been fascinating, and I really appreciate you being here. And all best of luck with the novelette's continued success. And
thank you so much. Going to the Yugos in a couple. Yeah, the Yugos should be very interesting. Because Lord knows they've been interesting up till now. So the actual ceremony should be very interesting too.
Yeah, that should be really cool.
Yeah, it should be interesting again. I'm very lucky to be on that ballot. I fought my way onto that ballot, tooth and nail, apparently. And so we'll see how that works out.
All right. Well, best of luck, and it was really great to get some insight into your process.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. I'm going to stop the broadcast.
Okay.